Hey bookworms. Oh, my forehead. Feels like it's so shiny. Anyway, I just wanted to jump on and say hi. I haven't been on in a while, and I just wanted to say a little bit about Big Magic and see what's coming up for you as you're reading this book or listening to it, as some of you are listening to it on audio. For me, this book was very instrumental, like I mentioned before, in allowing me to drop this perfectionism that I held without really knowing about it. As a type A personality, like a very like workaholic and wanting things to be neat and pretty and in a certain way, it was really challenging to have that comfortability or softness to create projects that I would later release into the world. So there's multiple things that happen in this creative process. And actually that's kind of like what I wanted to talk more about too, is the creative process, and see if any of you have any little tidbits or things that you would want to share with the group about your creative process if you are self-aware of it. Let's see, I have like little notes that I wanted to talk about. Bing, bing, bing. Yes, Game Changer, the title of this live for Big Magic. So Game Changer for me was this passion planner. Brian bought this for me because he thought that I liked it, and he bought it for like $1 for the end of year of 2017. And I started using it, and it was like my calendar, but it also became like my journal, and I use it a little bit differently than maybe it's designed to be used, but I do use a lot of the tools that are in here. And let me just show you. And at the beginning, so then I bought one for 2018, and they give you this like space to be like, whatever you put on here is what's gonna happen. Just think the wildest of your dreams, the things that you've always wanted to do and but haven't for whatever reason. Just write it all down and see what happens. And then you get like 3 months, 1 year, 3 years, lifetime. Like all the things that you write down are gonna come true on this page. So creativity allure. And one of the things I wrote down is that I really wanted to read Big Magic. I've heard of Elizabeth Gilbert. I read her Eat, Love, and Pray. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I read it, and it was a cool read. It kind of got Elizabeth on my radar. So then when she came out with Big Magic, I was like, ooh, just create just a little, I'm curious. I was really, at that time, pouring my energy into Barnhart Weddings, which is the company or Barnhart Photography, which is the company that I own with my husband. And Barnhart Weddings was the little offshoot for photography here in San Diego and in Chicago, and worldwide actually. So I was pouring my energy into that, and there was a photographer in one of the feeds that I followed and things like that, that she was like, I'm gonna read Big Magic as a business like strategy type of book. And I was like, interesting. So then I picked it up with just a little bit of curiosity, but at the same time with that kind of in mind, I'm like, all right, well, creative living, let's figure this out. So dove into it, and it became one of the things I wanted to do in 3 months. So in March 15th of 2018, I would have been, why did I do that so weird? That put the year first and then, interesting. Anyway, speaking to myself. Let's see. And so then out of all the things on this map, it became my game changer. So the game changer comes in here. You map what you need to do to get it. So purchase book, start reading it, journal about it, think about it, and things like that. And Big Magic, some way along the ways, allowed me to free up that, like I was saying, perfectionism, which allowed for other things to be able to open up, my world to open up and things to come in, and one of them was yoga. So I do believe that Big Magic was, Big Magic, my passion planner, Big Magic were really big things, stepping stones in my life and becoming the person that I am today. And my life continues to unfold and transform, and it's wild because it looks so different from a year ago. I can't even imagine another year or 3 or 5 years from here. Also, a little bit more in regards to my creative process. Typically what happens when I do become curious about stuff, and this kind of happened with Elizabeth Gilbert, and Big Magic really hones in on curiosity and fear, and she's just like, if you get little glimpses of things And I like to think about it in a way that what you are seeking is seeking you. So if you get that little inkling, pay attention. And it doesn't always mean that it's going to lead to something profound, right? So like I was curious about calligraphy, so I picked it up. I bought a little pen, and I had an empty notebook, and I started writing in it, and it didn't really last long. And I realized that, yeah, it's seemed cool. I didn't spend a ton of money on it, but it was worth the exploration. And it's like, maybe I'll revisit it, but for now it's not something that I'm pouring my attention to. And obviously my energy's not going there, so it's not growing. But it ultimately is not that important to me at this time in my life. So not all of your explorations are going to end in something profound, but oftentimes curiosity leads to a very interesting and integrative life, I believe. And it continues to grow and change for me. And Passion Planner, they're not paying me to say this at all. I just become to love it. So the following year, I got an extra sized one. So for this year, right? So small one, big one. Because I needed more space for my ideas and memories and things I wanted to remember. Basically what happens is when I have a little inkling, I go towards it. And in terms of yoga, all my energy's been going towards really establishing myself as a yoga professional. And when an idea comes, this is how I use these blank pages. Well, there's really no blank pages in my Passion Planner anymore, but there actually is one page a little bit. But basically what happens is an idea comes, or inspiration, and I get my Sharpie pens, which I love. I think these are like the medium. These are like fine Sharpie pens. They're not paying me to say this either. I'm sharing with you the tools that I use to be creative with. And there's nothing better than a blank piece of paper, right? For me, and it just all just flows like stream of consciousness when I get that idea, and then I just grab it onto paper. I've designed my entire website in here. I've designed my YouTube channel. I've designed the Red and Blissful challenge and how it's gonna look and timing. It just all, once it comes in, it pours out, and I map it out, I rethink it, polish it. And then the next step is to create content. Then I begin to create content for whatever it is that I'm going to send out into the world. And more, especially with my YouTube videos, it takes me a lot less to film, not only because I'm becoming a little bit more proficient in articulating the things that I want, but also because I am letting go of things. So there was a moment in time that our place, because we just have so much airflow, there's just so many flies, and I would feel like I would have to re-record over and over and over again, because in one of my meditations or something like that, or my intros, you could hear a fly literally zipping by the microphone. And at one point I was just like, fuck it, I'm releasing and letting go and embracing it. And I began to say hello to the flies. I wasn't gonna spend time re-recording. I'm not gonna spend time killing them, even though that's a whole different story. I don't want to go in there. I'm not really proud of that one moment with 2 different little flies, which I forgave myself for killing those 2 flies, but I felt really bad because I could have taken extra time and just let them out, but I just had it with them. And then I was like, wait, what's becoming here? Life is so precious. All life is really precious. But yeah, so that's kind of how the creative process works for me. I'm curious to know if any of you are working on something, or if reading Big Magic is something that is where you're at right now, or how you get to create things. And it doesn't have to be on a bigger scale. And you might be creating things that nobody else sees or will ever see. And Elizabeth Gilbert speaks about that. It's just this pure, there's this joy, this unimaginable satisfaction that comes from taking the metaphysical, right? Because it happens in the metaphysical. There's this idea, and she calls them floating around. I don't know if you guys got there yet, but floating around, it chooses you to be the vessel to put it out into the world. And if you don't put the time into it, then it won't come through you, but it will happen somewhere else. She talks about that. It's an interesting story that she goes into. But ultimately, metaphysical realm, right? An idea happens. Then you get it, figure out the actions that need to be taken, and then take action and put it out there. Oftentimes where the disconnect happens is there is the transformation from the metaphysical into the physical, the taking action and creating content and then putting it onto the world. For some reason, people have blockages there for different reasons. And if you read our last book, Eastern Body, Western Mind, she unplugged a lot of that stuff. So it's a lot of times there's a lot of wounds, triggers that need to be healed for us to step up in those ways. Anyway, so say hi, let me know what your process is, like I said, and maybe where you're at or whatever's jumping out at you from this book. All right, ciao.